here. I'm curious whether the executives you encounter who are contemplating their next great next, do they think as expansively as this individual who thought, hey, I could be chief of staff for the Queen of England, or do they think rather narrowly? For example, often we talk to executives who say, well, I guess my choices are A, consultancy, B, board seat. And I don't know if they think more fully, if you've heard any creative options that they've run past you or that have sort of transpired based on your conversations with them. What sorts of opportunities, in other words, might be available that a lot of us don't even consider? Sandra, any thoughts there?
Yeah, well, there's the obvious choices, you're either going to lead something or you're going to advise something or you're going to consult on something. So those are most of the time the situations that come up. But most recently, I was just talking to somebody and I was trying to figure out why he wanted to have a strategy call, because I said, what do you want to do? He's like, I don't know that I really want to do anything. I'm just, I've got like, 3 or 4 months out of the year where I feel kind of bored. I feel like, I said, well, you could take on an additional board seat. That's one option, but he really couldn't narrow down something that would make him feel passionate about doing anything. And sometimes it's really just understanding what, like Harriet said, where's your professional satisfaction going to come? You can say, get your juices flowing. You can say, float your boat. But when people are thinking about how they want to make impact, that desire to make impact comes from something that has to be met in this next scenario. And so I don't know where it came to me. Maybe it was because I'm also a volunteer and my husband is one as well. He's a SCORE mentor. I said, how about volunteering for SCORE? You're not getting paid, but you've got all this experience in food and beverage. You've had tons of successful exits and initial public offerings and all sorts of stuff. I said, and he pulled it up online. He said, that's it. This is a great call. That's exactly what I want to do. And then sometimes the needs are not as you almost can't see because the need is so blinding. The need to, let's say, bring in income. And there's maybe not the need to bring in income right away, but the panic that they're not going to find something. And sometimes that panic and I have no idea what to do can dim the vision. And when we get them with one of the coaches and they open up to their eyes to where they really make impact and where that impact intersects with their most competitive situation or their peak competitiveness, and where that intersects with what it is they really want to do, it's almost like the field of vision increases, or the veil goes away, or the fog clears, or pick your metaphor, or whatever you want. But all of a sudden, now they start to feel like there's opportunity everywhere.
Mm. What a wonderful place to land, my goodness. Harriet, what's your sense? And I do want to come back to this notion of volunteerism or working in the nonprofit space, because conversations I've had with our audience, not you listening, but others like you, well, that's a distraction from what I really want. That's just going to get in the way. I don't have the time. Why would I don't know that they see the strategic value that maybe we could both, all of us address it, at some point in our talk today. But Harriet, let's start where we began, which is what possibilities should executives be considering that often escape them? Maybe it's volunteerism, maybe it's something else. What's your sense about that?
Sure. So I noticed a question in the chat too about if I'm super busy and burnt out and how do I present myself during an interview? And it kind of goes with this, which is find something that you can be passionate about. And let's add that to how you present your full value of what you bring so that you can speak to that. And oftentimes it is volunteerism. I sometimes will recommend that if a company has sort of a public relations or an outreach strategy for community involvement, that they go to that office or whomever's responsible for that and try to get involved. It's a great way of building your network, meeting other executives, doing something that you're passionate about, and providing a bit of that day-to-day satisfaction, often on company time, because it's the company that's promoting the volunteerism or the cause or whatever. But getting on boards, being seen, getting involved, and in essence, giving back, using your skill sets and expertise in a different way. Later, that could turn into something full-time. And some people do want to do that. They're ready now to do something very different, but it doesn't have to. And sometimes it's pro bono, other times things you get involved with, there might be that opportunity. I'm thinking, let me be more specific. I once coached a president of a small startup company. And the way he got there was he was actually a volunteer in a program here in Ohio, which has to do with manufacturing startups. So he was a coach, if you will, that helped people get ideas off the ground. He was retired from Marathon Oil as an executive, and had gotten his financial planning license, and so was kind of dabbling in a bunch of different things. But he was introduced to a person who had the idea, and lo and behold, he became CEO. The person with the idea became CTO, and they were surrounded by other volunteers from legal, marketing, accounting, and whatever. And they started this company. So all of a sudden, he's running this startup, which was somewhat successful. They ended up selling the technology to a larger organization, larger company. And now he's back doing whatever. But it was through that volunteerism that that opportunity came to him. He wasn't counting on it. And I've also had people come back from an expat assignment and immediately go to their community organization as a way to get more integrated and more involved in the community. So I'm a real champion of finding something that's important to you and volunteering. I currently find myself president of the North Union Farmers Market. So the 9 farmers markets around Cleveland. And I got involved because I shopped there and I love cooking and I'm all about fresh farm to table eating. And next thing I knew, I was on the board, and next thing I knew, I'm president. So, but I love it. I mean, it's a totally different, well, I shouldn't say that. It's not totally different. It's a different experience where I'm learning things, I can get excited, and I can use a lot of my skill sets that I've acquired over the years.
Very cool. The top tomato, as they say in the farmers market, that's you.
Yeah.
Okay. Mark, what's your sense? It's funny, as I'm listening to Harriet, I'm recalling something, trust me, it's relevant, that my parish priest has said to me many times, which is time is love, because we often tell ourselves, I don't have the time to. But when you love something, you find the time for that, right? So I just wanted to share that bit of wisdom as well. So, Mark, what creative thoughts do you have for our executives who find themselves at a crossroad of sorts and are wondering, well, what are the possible directions I could go? And I only see a couple here. What's your sense?
Yeah, so I think that the directions, again, we talk about passion as a North Star, but it goes back to what's the value you bring. And I think that opens up avenues where going back and saying, okay, as I look at, what I've accomplished, translating that into then therefore, as I look to the forward, here's the things that I do well. and putting that together in a way that helps frame. And doing well might be business development, finding new opportunities in development of property. It may be, feeling passionate and I do well about mission-focused work, helping the health of others. I think there lies, as you look inward, of what have I done well and what gives me joy and happiness. I think then you start connecting that with then, okay, if I'm good at these things, what are those types of positions that would help me do that? I mean, I work with executives who thrive in turnaround situations. They love that. And they love the thrill of getting into something where they've got to join a function or a business underperforming or in the off the rails. And then they've done that over and over again. And then that may open up a PE-backed type of opportunity where they, hey, you know what? That's what, a lot of those organizations are after, looking for getting companies at value and getting them turned and scaling. That's a new, I had not even thought about that. And I've worked with several executives where that was the next creative thing. Taking a career of doing that full time, in terms of one company, and they got the formula of what it takes, and then be able to apply that and did very well. So that's one. Another one, Carrie, I think, talk about food and cooking. I had somebody who, as a hobby, loved to cook. And then, thought about that, I love to cook. Well, what if, I joined one of these, large, and I won't name the name of the coffee provider, but, they're out there trying to build their food menu. And that's something, I'm their greatest customer. And actually I worked in R&D. And putting all that together, what if? And they were successful going there. So, it begins with, what do you enjoy doing? What are you good at? And then projecting that forward, connecting the dots, and find where you might get paid for it, or it might even be a volunteer opportunity, as Harriet talked about. That's how the creativity comes.
Well, I loved your example of the turnaround sort of passion, because often we equate, or we think of passion as equating with, well, gardening, playing an instrument, stuff like that. But what you've drawn our attention to is something that might not be obvious to you in role or between roles as